I, Lance Biggs, am not bad-looking, but I had a reasonable suspicion when a woman who was a younger version of Elizabeth Hurley named Alicia Spears started showing interest in me. Based on looks and intelligence alone, she should be with someone like Brad Pitt, George Clooney, or Tom Brady, not someone like me. It took me a while to realize what was going on, but thankfully I did before it all came to light. But I'm getting ahead of myself. At the time I met the Elizabeth Hurley lookalike, I was 29 years old and had already been married to JC, Biggs' niece Swenson, for 4 years. Although I was a trust fund member, I was also working hard as an entrepreneur, running Biggs Alternatives LLC, which I founded. It employed about 30 people and produced socially conscious products. Thanks to my trust fund, I had a prenuptial agreement with JC. It contained a morals and adultery clause that provided for severe penalties, and if either of us violated the clause. My finances were pretty well protected by the prenup, as long as I didn't violate the morals clause. JC is a very attractive woman. She was 28 years old when Alicia started paying attention to me. JC also works, albeit part-time, as a travel agent. She's a little more materialistic than I thought when we got married, but I enjoyed making her happy. So I didn't complain too much about her overspending or her values. She was never mean. Great in bed and malleable, so that was all I really cared about. One of my greatest joys in life is playing tennis competitively. I played division, I tennis in college, no scholarships, and I'm pretty good for a club player. I play tennis, do weightlifting and work out on the elliptical machines in bad weather, or jog in good weather to keep myself in shape, which is very important to me. JC does not play tennis, although she enjoys socializing at the tennis club we are members of. The club has various social events every month, a decent restaurant, and a nice pool. However, JC never goes to the tennis court, even to watch me play in the tournaments we seem to play in every couple months. I play in singles, doubles, and mixed doubles tournaments. My doubles partner is Jay Feely, a 50-something banker who played Division I scholarship tennis in college, and although much better than I was when I was younger, is now at about the same level as me, and is ranked second among male players over 40 at the club. My usual mixed doubles partner is Misty Granger, a 38-year-old lawyer who is usually ranked 4th among women under 40 in singles at the club. I am 3rd among men under 40 in singles. Misty apparently only deals in transactions as an attorney, not litigation. Misty is a really special person, sweet, friendly, and spunky. She also has an awesome ass, but since I was happily married, and she seems to be too, I never dwelled on that aspect of her personality. I met Alicia, who looks like Elizabeth Hurley, with a scalloped figure, gorgeous face, flat abs, thighs, and an ass that defies description, at a tennis club that myself, JC, JJ, and Misty belonged to. Alicia had recently joined our club. I was never sure if she was a new member or, as we call it, a regular sponsored guest. Regardless of her status, most times when I was at the tennis club, she was there too. Alicia, who was 28 when I met her, plays tennis at almost the same level as Misty, although she has one major flaw. Her large breasts sometimes prevent her from playing. No one comments on that, and I really don't know how it happened at the time, but for a reason that seemed like complete nonsense to me. Misty not only declined to play in the tournament with me, but in the presence of Alicia, offered to replace her as my partner. Everyone would have been embarrassed if I had said, no, Alicia is distracting because she's so hot. So if you can't do it, Misty, I'll find someone else. So I agreed, outwardly, apparently warmly, but inwardly frustrated, because by then, Alicia had intensified her attempts to seriously play along with me. The situation got even weirder when Misty teamed up with Roger Turner for the tournament. No one ever wanted to play doubles with 30-year-old Roger, because he's an asshole. I was confused. Alicia wanted to put in as much time practicing as I would accept. I don't know what Alicia did for a living, but basically she was always available. Besides, she was always wanting to socialize after class or go out to lunch or something. I complained to JC about Alicia trying to monopolize my time at the club, and I also talked to her about how baffled I was that Misty had teamed up with Roger. JC didn't seem to take me seriously. She just smiled and said, I'm sure it's just because you're nice to everyone, and not everyone in the club is nice to Alicia. Why? What problems do people have with her? I asked sincerely. Well, just between you and me. A lot of women are jealous of her, and she's not as nice to other women as she is to you, JC replied with a smile. How do you know that? I asked. Because I know all the gossip at the club, she laughed. Then do you know why Misty dumped me and then went to Roger? I have no idea about that, JC smiled. In general, when it came to Alicia, I was adrift. But when Alicia started calling me at work, I knew something was wrong. This was fully confirmed when, after a workout on a hot day, she insisted that we go to the pool to freshen up. The bikini she was wearing left no room for imagination. Fortunately, there were no children around. Her body would have made any heterosexual man drool. It was then that I finally decided that I needed to be proactive in finding out what the hell was going on. I tried to find out from Misty why she'd left me for Roger, but she was strangely difficult to get through to. It wasn't until the third round of the tournament that I cornered her. Alicia and I beat her in Roger 6-2, 6-1, and she ran out of the club shortly afterward. I had figured her out, however, and instead of showering after the match or joining Alicia for the lunch she had begged me to go to, I caught Misty in the parking lot. I was sitting on the fender of Misty's BMW 8 Series convertible when she tried to sneak out. When she saw me, she sighed and her shoulders slumped. When I approached, she didn't smile. Misty is in great shape for her 38 years. Her face isn't pretty, but it's extremely interesting and sophisticated. She's the smartest person I've ever met, and she always dresses stylishly. Her tennis outfits are the most elegant in the club, and intentionally or not, they accentuate her perfect ass. Before this day, she and I had known each other for 5 years, and had competed in 6 previous mixed doubles tournaments, including 2 at other clubs. "Okay, Misty, what's the matter?" I asked sternly, straightening up to my full 190-centimeter height, and looking down at her 170-centimeter figure. What do you mean, Lance?" she stuttered. That told me something. Misty is more eloquent than any woman I've ever met, so if she stuttered, it meant she was nervous. I mean, why would a contrived reason cause you to not partner with me, sick Alicia on me, and then partner with that asshole from the club? It doesn't make sense. We've always had a good relationship, I said, crossing my arms over my chest. Alicia asked me to do this. She was almost begging. She said she wanted to win the tournament, and that she had the best chance with you, Misty replied, stuttering again. Bullshit, I replied, still crossing my arms over my chest. You could have just told her to forget about it. You didn't have to go along with it. Misty looked around furtively, then muttered, "Get in my car." I got in the passenger seat, she got in the driver's seat, and then after another furtive glance around, drove out of the parking lot. Without saying a word, she drove for a couple of miles and then pulled into the parking lot of a community recreation center and parked in the shade. Clearly nervous, she turned to me and said, "My husband Harris didn't like the fact that my partner was a good-looking young guy. He thought we might have something going on and pressed me to find another partner. While Misty was certainly someone I'd love to sleep with if we weren't both married, in the last 5 years, we'd never even had a flirtation with each other, let alone sparks flying from us." I stared at her for a full minute. She couldn't stand the eye contact. "Bullshit," I said. To my surprise, she began to sob quietly. I'd always considered her a tough nut to crack, so her tears were more than unexpected. I gently held her by the shoulders until she looked up at me, and then I put my hand on her chin, gently preventing her from looking away. "Okay, Misty, I know this is something serious. Let me first tell you that I'm the person you know best at keeping secrets. If you tell me the truth, I guarantee that no one will ever find out your secret from me, and I will do everything in my power to help you. Trust me." She sobbed some more, then wiped the tears from her face and sighed. "Do you promise not to judge me?" "I promise," I answered. "Do you promise to remain my friend?" "I'll be the most loyal friend you've ever had," I parried. After another deep sigh, she said, "I don't know how Alicia found out, but there is something in my past that threatens my license to practice law. If my law firm found out, it would be very bad for me at work. And it would also be bad for my marriage, which seems to be on the rocks right now because of some of the things I've recently learned about Harris." That statement surprised me, but I tried not to show it when she continued, "Please let me leave it at that." I didn't like where this was going, but I saw no reason to upset Misty further, so I said, "Of course I don't need the details." Misty continued, "Alicia promised not to tell anyone if I turned down the role of your doubles partner and offered her as an alternative." Now I was truly confused. After staring into space for a full minute, my brain started working again, and I asked, "So she's blackmailing you?" "Why would she do that?" "I really don't know," Misty replied, "but she seems to like you for some reason." "I don't understand that," I replied back. "She could sleep with just about any guy she wanted. Why me?" "I don't know," Misty said. Some people just have feelings for other people that defy rational explanation. I mean, sure, you're a great and good-looking guy, but I finished that sentence for her, but I'm not in her class as far as looks are concerned. I don't know anyone who is. Misty sighed. Thank you, Misty. I smiled, kissing her forehead. I'll keep your secret, and if there's anything I can do to help you, let me know. I'm not just saying that, I really mean it. Thanks, Lance, she said, smiling for the first time all day. Can I drop you off at the club? Just stop a couple 100 meters from the entrance, and I'll walk the rest of the way. I smiled back. She did indeed give me a ride. Thanks again, I said, kissing her forehead once more. My father's philosophy had always been, if you have money, you should use it to solve problems, whether they are society's problems or your own. I rarely looked at things from that perspective, but now was the right time to take that stance. As it happened, I had hired a large private detective firm to dig into the Alicia Spears case. While the prestigious private firm I hired was conducting an in-depth investigation that involved following Alicia for a week and monitoring all of her devices, although it was still within the law, I was maintaining a relationship with her. Primarily, this meant we played tennis about every third day and tournament games on the weekends. She was becoming very clingy, and if I wasn't suspicious, I couldn't resist her. Did I mention that she was the sexiest woman possible, at least to my taste? Since Alicia was great entertainment for the men on the teams we competed against in mixed doubles, she was a valuable member of the team, well beyond her tennis abilities. By the time I received the report from the law firm, we had won all 7 of our matches. The firm's lead female operative, Constance Frigo, accompanied by Sam Curtin, one of their specialists, presented me with the report. I have a series of photos showing what Alicia Spears has been up to over the past week. Constance began, spreading out about 24 photos on a conference room table in my office. You might recognize some of the people she's been seeing. One woman we couldn't identify, she dated 3 times, Constance continued, pointing to several photos in the top row of printouts. And some unknown guy 3 times as well, including once with an unknown woman, she continued, pointing to the photos in the bottom row. As I scrutinized the photos, things began to become clearer. The woman in question was none other than my dear wife, JC, poorly disguised. The man was John Davis, my employee in charge of equipment at Biggs Alternatives, LLC, unmasked. Now, there were many ways to deal with this. For me, the first thing was to aggressively confront everyone involved. I don't need to go into the other ways as I take responsibility. The only question was who to confront first. I considered John to be the weak link, so he was first on the agenda. The rest of the detective firm's report was also revealing. They had heard enough conversations and reviewed enough documents that they had a good lead that confirmed what I now expected, which was also confirmed by what they were able to find out about Alicia's past. I allowed their guy Sam to install a bug on JC's phone. I paid the bills for that. And I also asked him or an expert he recommended to do an assessment of my company's entire system when Andy, the expert that Sam had recommended, showed up at my office the next morning. I introduced him to John and told him that he was representing a client with whom we would have a lot of business dealings, so he should devote the entire morning to bringing him up to speed on all of our systems. John looked a little hurt, but I didn't care. By the end of the day, he would be more than busy. I met with Andy after lunch, and he told me that he and another colleague of his had, with the help of our most experienced person besides John, could do a complete analysis of our system in 48 hours. I wrote him a check and told him to get to work. As soon as Andy left my office, I called John over. He still looked a little upset about the assignment I had given him that morning, so I decided to punch him between the eyes. After pretending to lock the door so he couldn't open it and escape, I got down to business. First of all, John, give me your office keys, pass cards, cell phone, and all other firm paraphernalia, I said, holding out my hand. He started to protest, but my look silenced him, and he complied. Secondly, Andy, the guy you talked to today is the expert I hired to do a complete review and rebuild of our system. There's no way you're going to go to work while he and his colleague are doing this. Understood? John nodded his head in embarrassment. Thirdly, John, within the next hour I'm going to find out what the hell is going on with you. How you behave in the next hour will likely determine whether you stay employed here, whether you get blacklisted in the state, whether you go to jail, whether your marriage falls apart, or whether I beat the crap out of you. John's irritation quickly left him and was replaced by an unhappy look and a sweaty forehead. I threw him the first picture of him and Alicia. How the hell do you know this woman? Well. He started to stammer before something seemed to click in his head and he said, I just ran into her at a restaurant last week. I really don't know her except that her name is Alicia. Wrong, I shouted and slapped him on the back of the head. Not too hard, but not gently either. Then I tossed a second picture into his lap. This was taken on another day last week and I have more, I said with a devilish grin, holding up a few other pictures he couldn't see. Now start telling the truth. John almost cried, then deflated when I showed him the picture of him, JC, and Alicia together. Then he almost blurted out what was probably the truth. He started it with words. I couldn't help it, Lance. Alicia is so sexy that I just couldn't resist her. After I fucked her once, she grabbed me by the balls and threatened to show my wife pictures of us sleeping together, which would ruin my whole family's life. You know I have 2 small children, he blurted out before bursting into tears again. I just stood over him with my arms crossed over my chest, with the digital recorder on, as he continued his story for the next 45 minutes or so. The gist of it was that JC had hired Alicia, and John was tasked with finding out all the financial information that Biggs Alternatives LLC had and installing a program that, if activated, could transfer control to anyone with the right password. Since most of my personal financial files were also on the system, John was tasked with finding a way to access them so that they could be taken over, so that most of my financial assets would be at risk. You were going to betray me because of sex with Alicia and the threat of blackmail? I snapped at him when he was done talking. No, well, Alicia screwed me a few more times to give me the carrot as well as the stick. She and JC convinced me that you were doing illegal things, and that I might even end up getting a monetary reward for helping them. I grabbed John's throat, squeezing it hard enough that he realized I could crush his larynx by pushing a little harder, and then brought my nose a couple of inches closer to his nose and said, "You're suspended for a week. Get the hell out and don't come back. You're not to tell anyone about our conversation. If JC or Alicia contact you, pretend to be sick, and even go to a private hospital to get checked out if necessary. But don't meet with them or discuss anything with them. Got it?" Since he couldn't speak due to the pressure of my thumb on his throat, he nodded in agreement. I let him go, and as I opened the door, I said, "I'll still pay you for the next week, and what happens next will determine." "Now remember what I said and get out," I growled. I couldn't help myself and kicked him in the ass, causing him to crash into the hallway wall on his way out. After the episode with John, I prided myself on my acting skills for the next 48 hours while Andy analyzed its system. I played another tennis match with Alicia, which we won, and even had a little body contact with her afterward. I was as nice to JC as I could be, and even got her to 3 finishes in one night before screwing her while in a coma. As soon as I received the report from Andy about what had been done to my company's computer system and the attempts to access my personal financial data, I hired his assistant for the next 2 weeks to do whatever was necessary to repair any damage and make the system more secure so that only I could access the important information. Now, it was time for my confrontation with Alicia. Sunday afternoon was the first time I really cheered Alicia up since she started flirting with me. I suggested a Sunday afternoon trip to my cabin in the woods, about 45 minutes from the tennis club. During the drive, she was in an upbeat mood and occasionally put her hand on my thigh. However, as soon as we entered the house, I handcuffed both of her hands to the bar I was using for exercise, her attitude changed dramatically. She tried to take it lightly, saying, "I didn't realize you were such a pervert," but it was clear she was worried. "I'm not perverted, I'm evil," I growled. "Tell me exactly what JC hired you to do. Alicia must be either a good actress or a sociopath." Because in as serious a tone as possible, she said, "JC didn't hire me to do anything. I barely know her." "Really? Then why did you meet with her 3 times last week?" I showed her the photos from all 3 meetings. "We just met by chance," she replied, no longer so confident in her ability to lie. "Why was John, my former head of it, present at one of the meetings?" I continued, shoving a picture of him and JC in her face. "I'd just been introduced to him and he'd left. I don't know anything about him." "You didn't know anything about him even when you slept with him and then blackmailed him?" I asked, pretending to be shocked. I didn't. Alicia began to stammer, calm before. I interrupted her. "You're not leaving here until you tell me the truth. I'm going to chain your feet to the wall, tape your mouth shut, and leave you for an hour. When I get back, you better start talking or I'm going to leave you like this for the night, and then for as long as it takes to accomplish my goals." As I began to restrain her legs, she asked, "Can I at least go to the bathroom first?" Without interrupting my lesson, I said, "No, pee like this or put it in your panties." As I started to tape her mouth shut, she said, "Okay." But I didn't let her finish and taped her mouth tightly. I want to make sure you're ready to tell the truth, so save it until I get back in an hour, I growled. She started to make muffled noises and pulled on the handcuffs. However, I paid no attention to her and just walked away. When I returned an hour and 5 minutes later, she was crying. I removed the duct tape from her mouth. Please, please, please let me go to the bathroom. I swear I'll tell you the truth, she sobbed. I released her, leaving only the handcuff on her left wrist and the other half cuffed to my right wrist, and led her to the restroom. Can I be alone? She whimpered. No, I snapped at her. She really needed to take a shit. I'd learned something that day. Even a girl as sexy as Alicia could take a stinky shit. After I handcuffed her to the bar again, Alicia told me everything. In front of the camera, there were actually two of them, one straight on and one in profile. As I suspected by then, JC had hired her to seduce John and me so she could get the most money from the divorce and make sure I couldn't hide any assets, and threatened to destroy my financial system if I didn't act decisively. Even though I expected this, I was very sad. I thought that JC really loved me. When I asked Alicia about JC's motivation, she had no answer other than her greed. Letting Alicia go, I said, "You know you can be prosecuted for blackmail and conspiracy to commit fraud, don't you?" She nodded her head languidly. How much did JC pay you? $50,000 so far, she sighed. I wondered how JC had managed to keep that expense from me. Anyway, I continued, how much more does she owe you? $10,000 plus. If she succeeds, another $100,000. Well, she's not going to succeed anyway. Now we're going to go to my office. You're going to detail all the payments JC made to you in an affidavit. I'll write you a check for the remaining $10,000 and you'll leave town. You understand? I have to vacate my apartment, she started, but I interrupted her. Take everything you need for a week. Give me an address to send your stuff to, and I'll arrange to have it shipped to you. She was surprised by this. After we executed the affidavit, I drove her to her house. As she was getting out of my car, she smiled and said, "Now that that's settled, would you like to sleep together goodbye?" I stared at her like she had three heads. Her smile changed to one of displeasure before I said, "No thanks. Just make sure you don't do anything that would make me report you to the police." She got out of the car and walked smoothly away. Right after I dropped Alicia off, I drove home. JC was pulling up at the same time. With a puzzled expression on her face, she said, "I thought you were going to be gone until later tonight." "You were wrong, bitch," I growled. "What's with the attitude?" She started before I interrupted her. "Your accomplices, John and Alicia, have given up on you, bitch. Take what you need for the week and get out." "I'll have you serviced tomorrow or Tuesday," I growled, holding my nose a few centimeters away from hers. After the initial shock, she seemed to pull herself together and squeaked, "I live here too, you can't." "Yes, I can. The trust, of which I am sole trustee, owns this house, as you recognized when you signed the prenup, and we moved in. I'm kicking you out." "You have 1 hour, and then I'm calling the police," I snapped. JC was out of my house, and out of my life, within 59 minutes. She had received notice on Tuesday, and the terms of the divorce, as outlined in the prenup, were included in the divorce papers. I would have let things run their course without further accusing her if she hadn't done something horrible. Alicia and I lost our last 2 games of the tournament. But since we led 8-0 before that, we still came in second place. One Saturday morning after the tournament was over, I saw Misty walking out of the clubhouse with a gym bag and 4 tennis rackets with a disgruntled look on her face. I stopped her. "What's going on, Misty?" There were tears in her eyes when she said, "JC obviously thought that since you and I are friends, she might hurt you by revealing my secret, even though I did what Alicia said. I was fired, and I can't pay my dues for the next 6 months, especially since Harris and I broke up over some criminal behavior he committed. Now my life was over. I was furious. Misty could see the steam coming out of my ears. "Are you okay, Lance?" she asked with genuine concern in her voice. "Put your stuff back in your locker, Misty, and then come with me to the office." But she started. "No buts. Do as I say," I continued, and then gently took her hand and led her back into the clubhouse. She uttered a few more words of protest, but she realized from the look in my eyes that resistance was futile. I waited for her outside the women's locker room while she returned her stag, took her hand, and headed with her to the office. Although she wasn't usually there on weekends, the club manager, Nancy Gregg, was. "Hi, Nancy," I said, shaking her hand. "There seems to have been some mix-up with Misty's account. In the meantime, transfer her dues for the next 6 months from my credit card, and we'll get it all sorted out in the next few weeks," I said, handing her my credit card. There's a mixed doubles tournament at the Westover Club next month, and I need my old partner. I smiled by way of explanation. Nancy beckoned to her assistant, who was in the process of finalizing the deal, and I could see that Misty still wanted to protest but at the same time didn't want to do so. I walked Misty to her car where she thanked me and then rested her face against my chest and cried quietly for a couple minutes while I stroked her head. When she came to her senses, I opened the door in front of her. "Can we practice tomorrow?" I asked. "Would 11 o'clock be okay with you?" she asked. "I'll sign up now. One more thing, I really meant it the last time we talked. And I said I would do anything to help you." "Those aren't just words, that's a promise." She smiled and then plopped her firm ass into the driver's seat. Not that I was paying attention. The next day we had a great workout and then a nice lunch with 3 other club members. Monday I was on the warpath. I demanded a meeting with JC, the first time I'd seen her since I kicked her out, at my attorney's office. When she got there on Wednesday, I presented her and her attorney with all the basic information I had about her collusion with John and Alicia. "This is not criminal behavior," her attorney said after reviewing the case file. "The prosecutor's office might agree with you," I countered. "But we'll find out. Either way, I'll sue your client in civil court and take no prisoners." JC looked shocked. "What do you want?" she asked meekly. "Well, since you had to be vindictive and fire Misty Granger, I want the property settlement agreement we agreed on earlier renegotiated and your monetary compensation cut in half." I smirked. "Now listen," JC's lawyer started to say, but I interrupted him. "You have 2 days to make a decision. Then I go to the DA's office and file a civil suit. I think it's only through John's testimony. He should stay in my good graces if he ever wants to get another job specializing in this field. That I'll get my way." Then I got up and walked out. By Friday, she had agreed to my proposal. While the divorce process was going on, now everything was going smoothly. It was only a matter of time since all the issues had been resolved. I still couldn't understand why JC did what she did. I still couldn't bring myself to ask her about it, since I couldn't stand being in her presence. Then something else happened that took my mind off the issue. Misty called me at night about a week after my meeting with JC. After a short conversation, she asked, "Did you really mean that you would help me?" "I've never meant anything else in my life," I grinned. "Can I come back in about 10 or 15 minutes? "I'll leave the light on for you," I replied. Misty did indeed show up about 15 minutes later. I hugged her and offered her a glass of wine. She accepted, and we sat down at my kitchen table. "I'm so embarrassed, Lance. During the divorce proceedings, I learned that Harris had lied about our finances for the entire last 2 years. In addition to some criminal behavior, he gambled away all of our money. He has gone to an undisclosed location which will at least make the divorce easier. But the bank is going to take my house. I know you have at least 3 guest rooms. Can I stay in one of them until I get a job and get back on my feet?" I had to suppress the lustful thoughts that flashed through my head when she asked that. I'd always liked Misty, and I thought she was pretty and, well, she did have an amazing ass, but I'd never really considered her as a suitable match before. Now things had changed in my life. I didn't think it was fair to her that I looked at her that way when she was going through a hard time, and I didn't want to take advantage of her, but I also couldn't refuse her desperate request. Responding, I vowed to keep my lustful thoughts in check. "Of course, Misty, I told you I'd help you and I will. When do you want to move in?" "Well, I have a sale this weekend, and the bank wants me to give them the house next week." "Would next Monday be okay with you?" "Sure," I said, smiling and squeezing her hand. "Besides, I'm selling my expensive BMW convertible and buying a cheaper and more practical car. Will you be able to help me?" We spent the next hour in pleasant conversation. We hugged goodbye, which again made me suppress my lustful thoughts. That weekend I helped Misty with the Saturday yard sale, and Sunday morning we played in the first round of a tournament at the Westover Club and won. Sunday afternoon I went with her to sell her BMW and buy a regular Honda, which brought her about $10,000, enough to pay off some other debts, after she paid off her car loan. On Monday I put everything she didn't sell but wanted to keep into a small storage unit, and on Wednesday she moved into one of the guest rooms. Saturday night we went out to celebrate our new place together, and it was nice to have someone else living with me as I didn't like living alone. Our nice living arrangement changed dramatically when we got home shortly before midnight. I had never seen Misty consume much alcohol before, but that night she had apparently drunk more than her body could properly metabolize. Because although she wasn't actually drunk, she didn't feel any pain.
After making coffee, we sat down in the living room to chat. After about 5 minutes, she drained her cup and then came over and sat on my lap. As she looked into my soul, or rather my eyes, she murmured, "You know I would be helpless if you wanted to take advantage of me. There's no way I, a little one, could fight off a big beast like you. Then you could tie me to the headboard of the bed and do whatever you want to me, and all I could do is beg you to stop. I'm completely at your mercy." By the time she finished her monologue and stuck her tongue in my ear, I was hard as a rock. Then, for the first time in my life, I acted like a caveman and did exactly what she predicted.
My release, my first sex in months, and the most intense I could remember, fried my nervous systems. I think hers did too, because we just lay together for a long time. Eventually we came to our senses completely and looked into each other's eyes. "You're a goddamn animal," she moaned, tracing a few quick kisses over my lips. "You're a gorgeous woman," I murmured in between kisses. "Time for some more fun," I giggled. I saw stars and exploding Roman candles. She seemed to be too. My brain must have been overflowing with endorphins because I don't remember how we ended up in each other's arms, covered in a blanket and sheet. But that's how we woke up the next morning. As we looked into each other's eyes, ignoring our mutually disgusted breathing, I said, "It was the most beautiful thing I've ever experienced in my life."
Misty's eyes widened and she blurted out, "Ha ha," before she smiled and said, "That's the nicest thing anyone has ever said to me." We kissed and decided we had really bad breath. We brushed our teeth and went into the kitchen to have breakfast naked. While I was toasting bread and Misty was making scrambled eggs, she looked at the clock. "It's almost 10:45 and we have a match at 1 o'clock. We'll be useless," she grinned. "Yeah, but it was worth it." I smiled, kissing her and pinching her ass at the same time. We might have actually been in really good shape for the match if we hadn't hooked up in the shower before we left. It really wore us both out. We lost the first set 6-1.
Although Misty still seemed lethargic, I was just starting to come around and we were leading 4-3 in the second set. After that, all I could think about was sex with Misty and we lost the second set, set 6. 3 to a team, we should have beaten 6-2, 6-2. After we exchanged handshakes with the other team, I plopped down on the bench next to the court. Misty came over and sat on my lap, wrapping her arms around my neck. "You just needed some fun in the shower, didn't you, animal?" She grinned, then bit my nose lightly. "I didn't see you fight back, you evil whore sorceress." I grinned back. "I guess you're right." She smiled again, kissed me quickly, stood up and said, "Now I need a nap. Take me home." "Yes, ma, I am," I replied. We did take a nap, but only after she drove me to another amazing finish line. For the next few weeks, things went smoothly between Misty and me. She no longer pretended to live in the guest room. Instead, she just moved her clothes and toiletries into the master bedroom where JC's stuff used to be. For some reason, we never came close to having a serious conversation. We both enjoyed each other's company so much, whether we were having sex, taking nature walks, playing tennis, or just sitting together reading a book or watching TV, that neither of us seemed to want to rock the boat. That's not to say that I wasn't thinking about the future, and I'm sure she wasn't either. It's just that we were afraid to talk about it out loud. Fortunately, thanks to my father and I intervening, Misty was able to get a job as a paralegal. She complained that she wasn't paying my rent. I took it lightly, saying her carnal services were enough. "You arrogant bastard," she wailed pretentiously, playfully punching me in the chest with her fist until I threw her down on the bed. I'm not sure how long things would have gone on if neither of us had decided to have a serious conversation when about 6 or 7 weeks after she moved in with me, she started throwing up in the mornings. The second morning after it happened, at breakfast, which I was eating and she was only picking at, I playfully asked, "You're on the pill, aren't you?" "No, but I can't get pregnant." A few years ago, before I even knew he was a player and a criminal, Harris and I tried unsuccessfully to have a baby. We went to a specialist and I was told I couldn't have children. She then started to explain the biology or physiology of the situation, but I stopped her. "You talk too much," I laughed. "Still, I think you should see your obstetrician-gynecologist." "No, it's no use," she said. But I didn't take that as an answer. That evening on the way home, I stopped by the drugstore and bought all 3 sets of home pregnancy tests they had. When I handed them to Misty, she blushed with embarrassment. "I told you I'm not pregnant," she said. "So you don't mind testing with these kits to prove it to me, do you?" We talked. We didn't argue, we'd never argued until now, for a few more minutes before she agreed just to get off my back. 10 minutes later, she came out of the bathroom with her lower lip quivering. "I can't believe it," she muttered. I took the test devices from her. One had a very bold plus sign on it, another had a very bold double dash, and the third one said pregnant in bold letters. She cried and buried her face in my shoulder. "Now you're going to kick me out. You don't want a fat old woman 9 years older than you ruining your life," she sobbed. Within seconds, my mind cleared. Weeks of kicking the can down the road, instead of having a serious talk with Misty, had led to a decision. I started laughing. Misty pushed me away and screamed, "Why are you laughing at me?" "I'm not laughing at you." I smiled and pulled her to me and kissed her hard. Breaking the kiss, I said, "I'm laughing because I finally realized the truth. I love you and I desperately want to have a baby with you. And if you agree, I want to marry you." She looked at me strangely, wiped away her tears, and asked, "Do you really think so?" "You can bet your perfect ass that I do," I laughed, picking her up in my arms and spinning her around. Before her tears had a chance to dry, she was already lying on her back on the kitchen table. Since the day 8 years ago when Misty found out she was pregnant, she has given birth to 4 children. Having 4 children aged 7 and under is a real challenge, but we love it. She loves being a homemaker, for which I am grateful, and we love our life together and each other. When we have the opportunity to hire a few babysitters for the kids, we still play together in the mix, but no longer in tournaments. Every day I thank my mysterious ex-wife fraud, JC, and her sexbot accomplice, Alicia, for unknowingly making me the happiest dude in the state.